Send in the red shirts.
So we got another episode of Discovery behind us, and this time I've got my crew with me, so I need them to sound off. Okay, crew, sound off for me. Who's here?
I'm here, damn it. Discovery.
Damn it, Jim.
Damn it, Jim, I'm still here.
Who else is here?
I'm here, but with a crappy microphone today. But otherwise, I'm here.
Sounds like you're stuck in the mycelial network, my friend. Anyway, so yeah, what was the name of this episode? What was it called?
Crap.
Well, you didn't even see it, right? Did you see
Am
the
I
episode?
wrong?
Did you see the episode, Big Sexy?
Am I wrong? No, I didn't see it.
Well, that's another argument. Didn't say you're wrong. Craig, did you see it?
I definitely saw it.
Okay. And the reason I really wanted to bring you guys on today is because as soon as the episode was over, or as soon as I finished watching it, and I guess, Craig, you watched it around the same time I did, our chat board was lit up with Craig saying, that was a pile of garbage. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. This is Craig Jace, who makes every excuse for this show. And I'm like, we got to talk about this. So this is episode 5 of season 2, called Saints of Imperfection. You know, again, what the hell does that title mean? Who knows? But I will say this. I didn't dislike it as much as I disliked the last 2 episodes. But there was definitely some bullshit about this. So I'm just going to go down my list. And Craig, well, Big Sexy, you can comment. But Craig, I definitely want your impressions. Because as I said, I was amazed at how vociferous, that's the thesaurus word for the day, you were about this. So we start off, we see Burnham running through the ship. Make way, make way. And it's clear that she's running to see what's going on with Tilly. Now, let me ask this. What's her position? Is she first officer on this ship?
Better not be.
Greg, is she first officer? Or is Saru first officer?
Yeah, I don't know what she is, actually.
That's a problem. I'm going to... What's that?
I'm just laughing because you're like, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm thinking she's first officer and Saru is the science officer. But my point is it kind of untoward of an officer to be running through the ship looking like there's in a panic? Is that the way officers really operate on a ship? That you know what I'm saying? Shouldn't they emit calm and command in all circumstances?
You know my opinion of her, so
I just don't ever remember Riker running through the Enterprise saying, "Get out of my way!" I don't remember that. Only time I've seen that done is with Captain Kirk, and we were talking about they just came out of the Mutara Nebula, and he knew Spock was about to die, so I give him a pass. But come on, and yeah.
Well, I suppose she is in the same quarters with Tilly. They sleep in the same room. They obviously share a lot. So I suppose I don't mind that she's become more of a crewmate or of a friend than just a crew member.
Okay, I accept that. But here's my next point. Why am I to believe that Tilly and Burnham are so close as friends now? What scene did I miss where it establishes that they are bestest friends? I didn't get that scene. So why is this not believable to me? Well, it's clear why it's not believable to me, because that's what these writers are doing this season. They're just throwing things out there in the script that they just want us to accept. I have not seen anything that makes me see how Tilly and Burnham have grown so close. Ironically, there's a shot at the end of this episode where Tilly starts crying for whatever reason, and Burnham takes her and hugs her. Then I can see that they want me to invest that they are in a relationship. But prior to that, I don't get it.
Well, I think that just throughout the first season, I think it's established that because they are in the same quarter, they sleep in the same room. Obviously, they share a lot. Just to put the record straight, from 2250 to 2256, she was the first officer of the whatever that. I can't remember the name of that ship now.
Oh, the Shenzhou.
Yeah, and then she was science specialist from 2256 to 2257, and then science officer. That's what her rank is now.
She's the science officer on Discovery now?
Yes, she is.
So, well, I guess okay. So Saru's first officer, right? Okay. It's just that we see so much more of Burnham than we do of Saru that it could be confusing. But okay, now here's the big thing I think you had, Craig. You thought it was stupid that the ship got trapped. Well, not that they were trapped. They did it intentionally. That the ship was stuck between the regular dimension and the mycelial network.
So here, I'll take you from the beginning of why I thought I didn't buy. It was a story that it was too unbelievable. First of all, the whole network of spores and all that stuff from the first season was just believable anyway. Because what does that even mean? It's just some made up pseudoscience. I don't even think it's pseudoscience. It's someone's dream of what could happen. The problem with Star Trek is that it's always tried to base what it depicts on science, even if it's a stretched version of science. There's still some science behind it, some laws of physics, some theories about what might be going on in the universe. This was just a network of spores. I mean, anyway. So I, put it aside to watch the first season, and then here we are with this episode where all of a sudden somehow, Tilly gets pulled into the network of spores. I mean, she gets dematerialized and gets materialized again in the spores rebuild her body, and then now she's in that network. Then what's worse is that the Doctor gets recreated from a memory. I mean,
well, no, from a teardrop, mind you.
Exactly. I mean, come on. What are these people smoking? That's why it was unbelievable to me. And then to make it worse, the Discovery, which barely knows how to use the bullshit spore network anyway, somehow knows how to go halfway into it and halfway out. I mean, come on.
Well, I guess I can stretch my suspension of disbelief enough to accept this mycelial network. I mean, we've seen crazy things on Star Trek that were pseudoscience. This sounds as much... I mean, I guess you can make the argument, how do spores survive in space? Why are they called spores? That's a weird name. And they even come up with a weirder name, the Josep. These names are just so stupid. But I think about, Big Sexy, you can chime in here, the episode of TNG called The Next Phase, where Ro Laren and Geordi are kind of out of phase. They're halfway in the material world and in some sort of... They're half cloaked and half phased.
Yeah.
And the episode The Pegasus, where Riker is on the Pegasus and they're doing some sort of forbidden experiment with phasing and cloaking. And the Pegasus is halfway phased in between an asteroid and space. Remember that episode?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, given that I have that knowledge because I'm a Trek fan, to me that was the most interesting aspect of this episode. The ship being trapped in between.
And then, of course, the piece de resistance was the fact that the Section 31 just suddenly miraculously appeared just at the right moment to save the Discovery. Yeah. What kind of bullshit is that?
Yep.
I mean, come on.
Well, I have in my notes that it doesn't it defeat the purpose of Section 31 teaming up with a Federation starship? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of Section 31, that they're supposed to be covert? And
I thought they were.
And at the end of the episode, we have Admiral Cornwall talking about nation building isn't easy. What is she talking? What nation building? What is she talking about? And she says that you guys, Section 31, you guys have to work with the Discovery to find Spock. Why? That's not what Section 31 does, is it?
No, it isn't.
No. And also, you remember the episode near the beginning starts where Georgia comes back and they get the shuttle and of course she's in it, and she says, oh, she's trying to find Spock. Why are they sending one person to go find Spock, and he was accused of being a murderer? So that was a bit silly, but you got the idea there was something more behind it. I didn't mind that too much.
It didn't make sense to me. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So here's the thing that actually somebody said on a Facebook group, which I actually love as a great theory for the show. So you probably know what's coming, but somebody said in Voyager, the emergency medical hologram, the EMH, used to create hollow stories on the side. And you remember there were quite a few episodes in Voyager where he had created hollow stories. And so they were theorizing that Discovery is just a hollow story that was created by the EMH and Voyager, which I would love that to be a good theory, because the show is so all over the place and off canon, and just it's almost like it is from an imagination, right? It is from someone's imagination, as opposed to being, they sort of what they are doing is making up the Star Trek universe as they think they know it. But because they don't know it properly, they're making things up, and maybe that to me it's a sort of a comforting way of thinking about the show.
Are you saying if that turns out to be the truth, that's the reveal in the series finale, that it would make it more satisfying to you?
I think so, because unless the show gets better in a way that it starts explaining why Klingons don't look like Klingons, and Section 31's out there, and nobody knew about that in the original universe, and why there's so much tech and all the stuff, just the stuff that's wrong with the series, that would explain it, because that would be someone's imagination.
You've already suffered through it, hating it, and then at the end, to me, Big Sexy, I think you'll agree with me, that's just like the Bobby Ewing in the shower. How would that make you say, "Oh, well, then the journey was worth it"? Then you still hate this episode, rightfully so. You're gonna. I mean, I didn't hate it for the same reason you do, but I completely understand. So, how could that be a salve for you to say, "Oh, okay, I get it"? I mean, you saw what I put on that Facebook page, right? I put down underneath your comment, whoever came up with that theory should put down the crack pipe.
I saw that.
Oh, wow. So speaking of that, when Giorgio gets off the ship, when they start off the scene with them saying, "We're tracking Spock's shuttle," right? And then for some reason, Pike says, "Okay, launch a photon torpedo and detonate it within 2 meters of the shuttle." Okay, I don't know if that's necessary to incapacitate the shuttle, but here's what I don't get. When the shuttle lands in the cargo bay, okay, so they have all these Starfleet officers with the phasers trained. That's not typically Star Trek, but I was like, okay, that's cool. I could see that happening. But then Giorgio appears, and I'm like, something's not right about this. And then I realize they mistook the wrong shuttle. How are you tracking Spock's shuttle, and it's not his shuttle, and it's Giorgio in the shuttle? Don't sensors determine biological makeup? I mean, can't you? They scan planets, and they say there are 5 humans, 3 Vulcans, 2 Ferengi. You couldn't do a scan and see that it's a human being in there? Also, didn't they even say in this canon, in the first season, that the Mirror Universe people have a different resonance, or a different, biological pattern, or different resonance or signature? And the proof of that is when they are in the mycelial network on Discovery, Burnham, I guess it's a tricorder, she pulls out a tricorder and she reads, she says, "I read 1 human life form. It's a human life sign." And she does that with a portable tricorder. They can't do that with the sensors on the Discovery? How are you chasing the wrong shuttlecraft?
Maybe the excuse is the nebula that it was heading towards was blocking the signals. That could be it.
And all the writers had to do was to say, take the 30 seconds. You know how they took 10 seconds to say, "Oh, you guys haven't gotten the new uniforms"? Well, it takes 5 seconds to do what you just suggested, which is a great idea. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
And to your point, I have a note here. Why does Giorgio have such a hard-on for Spock? Why is she so? Why does she drop her apple on the floor and square up with Burnham, like they're gonna fight? And she says, "If you put your hands on my brother," and she's like, "Oh, she's basically, I'll do whatever I want." Why does she hate Spock? What did Spock do to her? And I think you kind of touched off on that.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something. Well, as I said, I don't mind that side of the story. Obviously, they're building up a story and going to build up the backstory to that, so I don't mind. There's obviously something more behind it. But as I said, the only parts that were not believable, which made the episode disappointing to me, was the whole going into this stupid network of spores and Section 31 just magically uncloaking a ship right there, and all this. That were those two huge things. But the episode was, I thought, acted well, and there was lots of action and tense moments, and obviously, you didn't know if the Doctor was going to die or live, and lots of good stuff. But the suspension of disbelief bubble popped when they're doing this whole going in and out of a stupid network, which doesn't exist, and it's a network of spores. So it just spoiled it for me. And Section 31 just being too convenient to save the ship. Silly.
Well, you're talking about this network of spores in space, and I guess, like I say, I completely understand. I can let that go because I've seen twice now clouds in outer space on this series. A starship flying through clouds, pink clouds. We saw that earlier. You know the shot I'm talking about, right? Yeah. There's clouds in the vacuum of space. But you're right. I have a note here. The story just is not compelling. I didn't care. It seems like filler, where they've reduced Spock to a MacGuffin. And if you know about film and film theory, the MacGuffin is a plot device that is inconsequential. It's an object, a person that just drives the plot and is not even consequential to the denouement of the plot. And so all this seemed like filler. They keep giving us these stories when they let off with all the marketing says we're going to meet Spock, which I'm not thrilled about. But if we're going to do it, why do you keep creating these episodes that have nothing to do, don't move us towards that end, other than you keep dangling this carrot in front of us? None of the story, I guess you could say, it's going to tie in somehow, but the whole mycelial network thing and May, the most annoying character yet, has nothing to do, as far as I can see, with Spock. And yes, that's another thing. How
an annoying character. I would agree with you there.
How do spores form themselves to be human?
The other thing I forgot to mention was that the insertion of Ash into the storyline here was a little bit floppy side. Just why? What was the purpose? They could have done that with another character.
I had a note. I said when they're talking to each other at the end of the scene where they're talking, Burnham says to Ash out of the blue, she says, they think Stamets thinks he found a way to save Tilly, and Ash looks at her like, huh? And I'm thinking, why is she telling him? He knows nothing about what's going on with Tilly, does he?
Well, unless he does.
Well, we didn't see that.
No, we didn't, but yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you.
Here's another issue I have with the series as a whole. Now, I was on board with them making the POV through the first officer, Michael Burnham. I was like, well, that ought to be interesting. But here's the problem. There's a scene where Captain Pike approaches Burnham and says, the Section 31 liaison just beamed on board. And they walk to the cafeteria, and he points out Ash. And basically, now this is a guy who, as far as the Starfleet records show, killed an officer, that being Culber. And Captain Pike says as much. He killed a Starfleet officer. And Burnham once again says, well, trust me, Captain, I can handle him. This captain is turning out to be a because Michael always says, trust me, Captain. And basically, he's like, okay. And not only that, he walks off. He hasn't met Ash yet. This is a guy who murdered another officer on this ship. And he does not play a more authoritative hand in introducing him to the ship. Typically, the captain will be standing there at the transporter room to greet or to escort this guy who was a murderer, whether he was in his right mind or not. He basically says, Pike just says to Burnham, oh, go talk to him. I'm going to go do something else. Are you f***ing kidding me? Did you notice that, Craig?
I know what you mean, but maybe the writers forgot that he had knowledge of that, because obviously he wasn't the captain at that when that happened. But it was a bit sloppily done. And also, did we really believe that Ash couldn't hear what they were saying? They were just a few steps away. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I don't like this captain. The only time he does anything authoritative in this episode is when he says to Ash, You will only speak when recognized on my bridge. Really? Your bridge is about to be destroyed. Okay? So all he does is react. And I think my point is that this is what I was afraid of when they said they were going to have the series be through the eyes of the first officer. That means the first officer has to drive the action. Because if there has to be a meeting with Ash and it's through the eyes of the first officer, not the captain, we can't have the captain go in there and talk to Ash and then we, the audience, not be a part of that. But then Burnham, whose POV it's supposed to be, is not involved. You follow what I'm saying? So this is the problem with having the perspective be through the eyes of the first officer. She has to drive the action, which means the captain is not doing the things that the captain should be doing. Does anyone agree or disagree with that?
I agree, and it also sounds like they haven't really defined her role on the ship yet.
You're right, because they give her every skill she needs to have that the writers need her to have to get through the episode. So right now, she's an expert in the, I forget the what it's called, but the Vulcan martial arts. She's a xenobiologist. She's a top-notch pilot. She's what something else that I can't remember what it was, but it's all Deus Ex Machina writing where they have her do whatever, and they always have people come up with ideas at the last second. You know what I mean? I know on the Berman Trek episodes, for example, Geordi and Data would spend a good 2 minutes using quasi-scientific reasoning to explain how they're going to overcome a problem. Here, it's just, oh, well, we could do this. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. That's why I said it's the EMH.
So, I'm just going to go down this list real quick. Is it weird that Stamets doesn't react at all when Ash walks onto the bridge? I mean, he sees the guy who killed his lover, and he just goes right on talking. Isn't that the time where the writers could have interjected a nice little 1 minute, 60-second scene of conflict? They missed out on that.
That's true.
The other thing, and this goes back to my Deus Ex Machina, well, not really Deus Ex Machina here, but just things that the writers just throw out so they can get from point A to point Z. All of a sudden, now we learn that the mycelial network is destructive to anything that passes through it. Now we learn that the mycelial network, the JOSEP, whatever the that is, they will eat through your hole if you stay in the network too long.
Right.
Don't you think that's something that in season 1, when they first introduced that would have been introduced? That the captain
and also, why does the Discovery not get attacked when they travel through it?
I think the reasoning behind that is sound. It's because they go through it so quickly that the spores don't have an opportunity to attack. But nonetheless, wouldn't you want to know that? So
yeah.
That if your engine's cut out, hey, wait a minute. These motherfuckers are eating through my hole. What? Oh, well, Captain, I didn't mention that, did I? Oh, sorry.
Also, somehow the saucer section still does that ridiculous spinning thing, even though it's basically been eaten up by spores. I don't know. It managed to do that somehow.
Yeah, that's another question, Craig. Why did the Section 31 ship, why did it need to tractor them out of it? Were they stuck in it? I mean, I know they were stuck, but it was done on purpose. So why couldn't they just complete the transfer and get out of it? Why did they need to be?
I think they were falling in too quickly, and the people that were in the network needed more time. That was what it was.
They were falling into it too quickly.
But yeah,
they fall into it all the time when they make a jump, don't they?
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't remember, but it had something to do with the fact that they could only be in, half out for a certain number of minutes, and they went over that time limit. So.
Oh, so okay, so maybe I missed it. So if you're in the network too long, not only does your hole get eaten up, but you might be trapped there. Is that what?
Something like that? Maybe that wasn't explained by the writers too well. Something like that.
Big Sexy, you see where we're going with this?
I have an idea, yes.
Okay. What did I
Now,
have?
by the way,
Yes.
when the Section 31 ship uncloaked, did it look like an asteroid or something, or was I imagining that?
An asteroid, you say?
Yeah, I thought it looked like an asteroid. Maybe it was just too quick, but
I got to
to
be
me, it
honest.
looked
I
like.
got to be honest with you. Even during the show, things happen so fast. I forget why we got to where we were. Like I forget how Section 31 arrived there. Other than, well, they found they were tracking the wrong shuttle, and they got Giorgio, and then what's his name, Leland. Up here. I guess I don't remember the scene where they decloak. But who cares at this point? And you know, now here's the other thing. I have this note. So Saru says, Captain, 78% of our hull has been compromised. And then Pike says, Burnham, we're out of time. So what do? Culber and Stamets have a little foreplay. And then they sit there and casually start talking about their feelings. And then they spend another, what feels like 10 minutes trying to convince Culber to go through the network. Then he can't get through the network. And then they, rather than saying, let's just do this, they go through this. Well, what if we do this? Oh, that might work. Can we do this too? Yeah, put his DNA. I'm like, what? This is so stupid. The writers set up this time clock, ticking clock that they didn't have to. You know what I mean? So it's like, why are you guys sitting there talking? You can go through all the meet nice and meet cute when you get back to Discovery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So the 5 minutes or whatever it was, and then they gave them another 3 minutes. That definitely was way longer than 8 minutes in total. So, anyway.
Because they're sitting there they're talking to May, and I can't use the word that I really want to use for her. It rhymes. Well, which one does it rhyme with, Craig? The British insult. I could say it rhymes with blunt, but I won't.
Wow.
Wow.
Send your hate mail to Q Storm.
I hate that character. When she kept saying, "Well, our portal will be closed." I'm like, "Thank God, I'm done with die."
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, she was so annoying. And why is she so aggressive? Kill him! Kill him! Kill him! Oh.
For a beings that can reconstruct other beings and travel through space and time, they somehow didn't realize that the Doctor was just stumbling around and he wasn't trying to kill them. That was the most bizarre part of the story.
Yeah, it took Michael Burnham and a lot of people, like the guys over at Midnight's Edge and Random Mecha, who Big Sexy you met. They always say Michael Burnham has to be the hero in everything. She has to be absolutely perfect, and I'm starting to see what they're saying. She's the one who says, "Well, you know what it is that he's just defending himself using the tree bark."
Right.
What? Is it so you're saying it's really tree bark, not just a metaphysical appearance of trees? It's really trees?
Right.
And you don't understand that he's being eaten alive? So that when the Joseph attached to Tilly and she says, it hurts! Oh, it hurts! You don't realize that maybe he's going through the same thing?
Yeah.
It's just, I hate these writers. I hate Alex Kurtzman. Here's another thing, real quick. There's a scene where I think it's Leland and Pike and Admiral Cornwell are talking, and they're talking about tracing Spock's shuttle. And I think it's Leland that says something about, well, what if we try tracking tachyon particles? And then they say something like, tachyon particles are the same as like when you cloak and when you use transporters. No, they're not.
No, they're not. No.
What writers thought that there's any similarity between transporters and cloaking devices? Hello, that's why in the next phase and the Pegasus episodes of TNG, those practices that the Romulans were doing and what Riker's captain were doing were banned because those things have never been combined, and they were outlawed by the Federation.
Right. Exactly.
So for him to say, "Oh yes, it's just like tracking transporters, or when you go into the transporter, or when you cloak," what are you talking about? So,
yeah.
All right. That's my list. Now, having said all that, I'm loath to say I liked it, because I didn't.
God.
But it was better than the last 2 episodes. Having said that, I want to say this. I am completely at the point where I'm 180 degrees on Sonequa Martin Green. I don't like her acting at all.
Whoa!
I don't. She overacts. She over emotes. She you know how when you see someone who they scowl or they react with their face way too much. That's what she's doing.
Maybe it's because she spent a few seasons on The Walking Dead, and so everybody was pretty depressed in that show. So maybe she's like, "Wow, I can emote now." But actually, I don't have a problem with her acting at all.
Hugh has turned on his boo boo.
I can't stand her acting on this.
Wow.
Everything, like the last episode, Saru coughs a couple times, and she's like, "Saru, what's going on?" And I'm like, Saru's like, "I'm coughing. Calm the down." and every time she looks at a view screen, it's like she's looking at, images of World War II or something. It's like it's not. She overacts, man. She's basically on her Avery Brooks minus the enunciation.
Hey.
I said it.
I will be damned if you take shots. Let you take shots at Avery Brooks.
I said it. I'm sorry. For someone who studied in Vulcan methodology and grew up with Vulcans, I don't know what's going on with her. Now, I made the excuse that, first season, I considered it kind of like torture for a human to have to suppress their emotions like that, because they don't have the wherewithal to do that like Vulcans might have. And her mutiny and all of that she was going through in the first season was because she finally had an outlet, PTSD type of stuff. But I'm over that now. Stop it. Stop it. Just stop with the overacting. And let me go to something else. Unless, Craig, I don't want to monopolize you. Did you have anything else?
No, that's fine. But what I was going to say is that many times we say things like this about actors, but it's actually the director's fault. The director's probably making her do it, right? I mean, don't you think? I mean, don't actors just take direction from the director and he says, do more, surprise or whatever, and they do it. So,
well, you're right.
Sometimes think it's not the actor's fault; it's the director's fault.
That's true. Maybe you have a point, because if I were directing her, I'd say, look, Sonequa, every frame you've been in, you've had that scowl. Can you lighten up a little bit? Which brings me to another character, and this is I'm gonna kind of give you an example of why these writers suck and why they're just throwing shit out there that they want us to have some investment in, but I don't, because they haven't set it up properly. Why is Jet Reno on this ship? What was the purpose of introducing her character and then in the next 2 episodes doing nothing with her? No character development. We still don't know anything about her other than she was trapped on that asteroid, and somehow, being an engineer, she knows how to keep people alive, or she knows how to do medicine. Can anyone answer that question for me? What?
Well, so she's been on 2 episodes so far, right? So isn't that 2 out of 5 or whatever? I mean, that's pretty good.
Correct. Okay. let me stop you for a sec. Now,
Okay.
In our scheduling, mix up here, we were going to do a show about the episode Lessons, one of my favorite TV episodes.
We were.
They brought Darren on for 1 episode, Lieutenant Nella Darren.
Yeah.
I know in the 1 episode with her, I feel like I knew her better as a character than I know virtually anyone other than perhaps Michael, Saru, and Giorgio on this series, and it's in its 2nd season. So If they could do that, and the writers for the original Trek series, they did that with every guest star or every guest character that came on the show. So there's no way anyone can tell me that there's a justification why they have not established Jet Reno, who she is, what her skill set is, what type of purpose do they have for her coming up, why is she on the ship. All she does now is react and act like an asshole.
Recommend people drill into your head with a drill.
Right, with no anesthesia. Now, Big Sexy, you got anything on that? You've seen enough episodes with her to say, why the did they bring her on the ship and in 3 episodes have done nothing with her virtually?
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. And I'm going to expect my share of nasty mail on this.
Here we go. All right.
They brought her on to fill an agenda, to pander. They got rid of my little guy, the little doctor guy, right?
Well, this is a spoiler. If you didn't pick up, he's back now.
Well, he's back, but he's not back.
No, he's back on the ship now.
Oh yeah, that's right. They grew him from an eye drop or some shit like that. And the thing is, though, they bring in what's-her-face to be this character, and I hope, and I will allow for the, possibilities I'm wrong here, but I think they brought that character in just to pander to a certain group.
Well, I hear what you're saying.
Because she's not bringing anything to the table. Nothing.
That's true. And I hear what you're saying.
Her same deadpan style is her same deadpan stand-up. I'm like, really? This is what we're getting? Give me something new here. And we're not getting it.
Right. And you're saying something diplomatically, and I know what you're saying. I think everyone knows what you're saying. But if they were that shallow, wouldn't they say, well, we have our progressive couple back together. So, they wouldn't feel obligated to bring another one on, would they? And before anyone responds to that thinking, oh, what, you can only have one at a time? I'm not saying that. I'm saying how the powers that be think. So, in their minds, they've already fulfilled that quotient, haven't they?
No. I don't think so, because the actress they have to play this character now is someone a little more high profile and from another discipline, as in the stand-up comedy world. So I don't think they did. And she also brings her own fan base to the show.
Do you think that they will have her play a gay character?
I would be surprised if they didn't, honestly.
Okay. And if they do, that's fine. But I'm just addressing you saying that they brought her on to address an agenda, which maybe they did.
And the thing is, if they do, it shouldn't be a big deal, obviously. But that's the problem that I've had with this show from the beginning. If you're going to bring in a gay character, great. Look at the way they did it on The Wire. They had several gay characters, and it was never a big production number about, Omar or Shakima or whoever being gay. It's like, that's just who they are. If they do this with this character on Star Trek, dude, that's not the issue here. It's like when DC Comics went ahead and retconned a lot of things to fill that space. It's like, dude, let it happen organically. And they're not doing it. If they do it organically, I'd be surprised.
I don't get the sense that Tig Notaro was brought on the show to fill an agenda. I think they brought on because they thought that character needed that kind of person to play it. And I enjoyed her in the first episode, but the second one, as you said, it was not that good. So I'm hoping that when we see her again, it's going to be better. But that hardy, don't care, but want to get it done attitude was, she played it very well in the first episode when she was on the asteroid. So I didn't get the sense they did it for any other reason.
Well, wasn't she in this episode? And she literally had no lines, I don't think. Do I have that wrong? I thought we saw her in this episode.
I don't remember seeing her, but you could be right.
Well, let me ask, did we already talk about this? What do you think about the manner or the fact that Culber has returned?
I don't mind that he's returned, and I'm sure we've all seen the search for Spock, so we know that characters can come back.
You know what? I should shove you into an airlock for even comparing Culber to Spock. Let me just say that.
No. I'm just saying, he was gone forever. There was no way to bring him back, and same with Spock, right? He was like, "Okay, that's fine. Take his body, shoot it down to the planet. Next minute, there's a new Spock growing." Anyway, but I just didn't like the whole going into the Spore Network and the way that they, as you said, grew him from a tier and all this other rubbish. But I don't mind that he's back. I understand it. I'm glad because I actually enjoyed his character. I enjoy his character.
I like his character too. It's just there's a taint on him now by the way they brought him back because we saw his neck snapped. And that tells me that the writers were just... I find it hard to believe that they initially had planned to bring him back because to have him die so gruesomely, I think it was like, well, we want to bring him back. Well, how do we do that? We snap the guy's neck. Something to do with the spores, maybe? I don't know. I mean, do you think they had planned that? We see a close... Big Sexy, here's how it went. They do a scene where we see Stamets holding Culber right after his neck is snapped and Ash leaves the room, I guess. And he's cradling Culber. And remember how Stamets' eyes would go white when he was in the network?
Yeah.
Remember that, Big Sexy?
Mm-hmm.
So he's holding Culber, and a teardrop comes down his eye and lands on Culber's cheek. And then he kisses him, and then we cut back to the real time, and Stamets just says, "It was me. I brought him here," and that's the only explanation we get. So I put in on one Facebook page, oh, so now Stamets is Christ. We saw, that's what the J.J. Abrams Trek did with the Tribble blood in Into Darkness. The writers don't realize you cannot around with solving death. Because if you even hint at that, then I don't care. No one's in jeopardy. Now I'm wondering, why can't we bring back Prime Georgiou? Well, I guess she was eaten, wasn't she? The Klingons ate her, so that's...
Oh, that's fine. I'm sure they'll explain that. Went to the sewage system, got a DNA.
They went to the waste extraction of the sarcophagus ship.
Exactly.
And they cried on all of the feces. Okay, let me stop. Okay.
Wow.
So, guys, I want to get some just final thoughts on this episode. Big Sexy, I know you didn't see it. How many episodes this season have you seen?
I've seen the first 3.
Okay. So you didn't see an O-Ball for Sharon. You didn't see that one, huh?
Who for what?
Exactly. So, Big Sexy, you've seen the first 3 episodes. What do you think of the season thus far?
I don't think it's improving fast enough. The perfect example is when the commander from the quote-unquote Enterprise #1 comes on in the normal Trek Federation uniform, but yet Discovery is still behind the 8 ball on this. Now, I know there's some off-camera, decisions that limit what they can do. They still need to work around this. There's still no clear role of Burnham. Where does she fit in the hierarchy? It's not congealing yet.
Right. And you've often said that the first 3 seasons of, well, let's say first 2 seasons of TNG weren't that great. And you're right.
No.
But the problems they had were it wasn't in the writing, I don't think.
I disagree. I think it was.
Well,
because a couple of those early episodes, man, are just not good.
Okay. I don't want to argue that point. I guess what I'm saying is the things that I think are bad about this series are things that are not going to change. It's the technology issue, which it's the difference in the uniforms. It's the Klingons. It's the horrible pacing, the editing, where everything has to be so fast. Even when Tilly's talking to May, when she first arrives in the network, and the music, you would think you're watching a chase scene. There's no subtlety in this series. There are no quiet moments where we learn about characters like we had throughout TNG, Voyager, DS9, and they still managed to bring excitement. There were a lot of episodes in each of those series where there was no action, but the episode was still very satisfying. City on the Edge of Forever, Data's Day, In Theory, Inner Light. I'm not as well versed on DS9 or Voyager, but there were still good episodes. Every one of these episodes, these are things that I don't see them changing or getting better. There's room for improvement, but I don't think they're going to change the tone of the show, and that's what I'm having a problem with now. Craig, what were you going to say?
I'm planning on giving it a few more episodes. So I know we're already 5 episodes into the season, but it almost feels like you said, the character development's not there, and they're introducing a lot of questions into the series. What's Section 31 doing around the place? Why is Giorgio back? What's Ash doing? So I want to see those play out, and I can make my decision. But I mean, overall, I'm enjoying it. Let's put it that way.
Really?
That's that. Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm enjoying it. It's just, it's hard to suspend disbelief when you have been watching Star Trek since the 70s, and you've grown up with a progression of technology from original series and TNG. There's always a progression. That's why you didn't mind it. You didn't mind that TNG was more sophisticated and Voyager was more sophisticated than that, and so on. But these things in here, and plus the strange storyline about the spores, and it just, suspension of disbelief in the last episode was tough, really tough. But I'm going to give it some slack and give it a few more episodes.
I loved how the Spore Network, from the perspective of seeing outside the ship, it looked like it was stuck in the ocean. It didn't look like a network. It looked like it was in water or something like that, which,
yeah, you're right.
Not very convincing. Here's my take. I defended season 1, tooth and nail. And I'm wondering if that's because I liked Lorca as a captain. I think Jason Isaacs brought something to that season that I'm not getting here. With Pike, I got a guy who looks the part, but I'm not feeling captain. I'm not feeling authority with him. And I posited earlier that's because they put the perspective on Burnham that it's shown through her eyes. But in season 1, I didn't feel like that was as much of a problem as it is here. I don't know if that's a testament to Jason Isaac, but I don't know. I'm not feeling this season at all. And the problem is, it's tainting my defense of season 1. All the things that I conceded and I gave a pass on in season 1, I'm starting to think now, well, you guys you really didn't know what you were doing in season 1 either. So it makes me not want to go back and watch season 1, because I'm gonna see all the flaws as flaws now. Purely flaws, not things that you were doing to build up that you're gonna explain. But it's just, you were just as bad then, and I just didn't see it because I wanted Star Trek so bad. And Craig, you said something that makes I don't want to insult you.
That's fine.
But
I can take.
No. A lot of the things you said, they're introducing these things without a lot of explanation. It reminds me of another show which I did like, but they didn't. They introduced a lot of stuff and it paid off nothing. Lost.
Lost. My favorite show of all time.
Okay, listen, I'm just saying, Lost is Shakespeare compared to what I'm watching here right now. So don't get me wrong.
But the thing about Lost, though, is that they did try and eventually wrap up the stories, but they just didn't have enough time. But the Star Trek is not about that. Star Trek is not about all these loose ends, but Lost was all about loose ends. That's what the whole show was about. There's this strange stuff happening on an island. Yeah. And every episode there must be some strange shit going on, otherwise it's not Lost. But Yeah, I miss Lost now. How many years has it been? More than 10 years now, I think.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that I'm feeling the same way. I mean, although Lost gave me enough to compensate in that final season, it did enough for me that I could forgive. What was that season with the cages, which was there was enough going on. It was so rich that I could forgive that season with the cages where Sawyer and was it Kate? Was that her name?
Yeah.
They were trapped in these cages, which really led to nothing. And then at the end, feeling like a little robbed with the payoffs. But there was so much more I can hang my hat on. I'm not getting that here in this season. So all I'm seeing is flaws now. And I'm gonna rock your world, guys. If it continues this way, I can honestly say it will season me to be able to watch the Orville because I've gone through enough with what's really bad.
The Orville is so much better.
Oh, the Orville had some great episodes this season too, I must say.
And see, again, using the second season as an escalator for quality, the second season of Orville so far is so much better.
Well, I've told you my problems with the Orville. I mean, let's put aside my subjective problems. That being, I think, is theft, intellectual property theft.
I don't think it's theft. I think it's
putting
homage.
that aside.
It's sort of what Family Guy is to Star Trek. It's the same thing. Family Guy is to The Simpsons, right?
I understand, and I have a problem with Seth MacFarlane for not coming up with original ideas. That's my point. However, what I'm saying is, if the jokes were funnier than what I've seen in the 4 episodes I've seen, I could be like, okay, it's a funny.
See, right there, that premise has changed in the second season. It's not nearly as jokey as it was. Okay. Would you agree, Craig? True.
Yeah, you're right. But they have funny moments still.
Yeah, they have funny moments, but it's not nearly as jokey. No, it's more of a sci-fi.
They have so many famous actors coming on the Orville too, which is
exactly
pretty cool.
It's more of a genuine sci-fi show now, Q.
Yeah. But one thing I wanted to say about Discovery before we wrap up is that, did you notice that in the previews for the upcoming season, they showed that there's a storyline with Saru and his planet and how they get taken. Now, that out of all the shorts that they had last year that kept us paying the $5 a month to CBS, that seems like the only one they're going to draw out. They're not drawing out any of the other ones, but they're drawing out that one, which is cool. But I'd love them to have done extended stories of the other shorts, like the guy who woke up on the Discovery 1,000 years in the future, for example. What's all that about? That kind of thing. But anyway, they're doing the Saru storyline. Did you see that?
I did, but you know what? What I fully expect is that they're not even going to maintain continuity from that episode where we're going to see more of Saru and his home planet and the short trek. I would not be surprised if they don't maintain continuity from that episode to the short trek, because they didn't, as far as I'm concerned, the last week's episode, they didn't maintain continuity from that to the short trek. With the whole thing with the Great Balance and the Vahari. In the short trek, they laid out they painted the picture of what it is, the Great Balance. And a lot of that, then they introduced a lot of this other crap. Like the whole Predator thing. I think of Predator, I think of something running your ass down and slitting your jugular and eating you. No, the writers always say, no, that's not what we mean by Predator. What we mean by Predator is that we have these guys in a spaceship in orbit, and the Kelpians, they voluntarily going to sit down in a circle and get taken. So that makes them a predator species. What? Bull. So I'm not looking forward to that episode because I'll be able to pick it apart, all the stuff that they threw against the wall for that week of production that may not even be congruent with what we saw in the short trek, The Brightest Star. So, all right, you guys want to do a rating? What would you rate this out of 5, Craig?
6 out of 5.
I was say what?
All right, I would say 2.5.
2.5. Okay.
Generous.
I would say 1.5 to 2. And one thing I wanted to say, Okay, I'm gonna catch hell for this. I'm a progressive guy. I really thought I think they were wrong to give me a shot of Colbert's ass. I didn't need to see that. I didn't need to see that.
Well, let's see, Mr. Progressive, you're body shaming now.
I didn't body shame anything. You could put the most handsome guy, whoever people says is the sexiest man alive, laying down there on the floor naked. I don't want to see his ass.
So not only are you body shaming, now you're, homophobic.
I don't want to see a naked man's ass.
But actually, the funny thing about that is that I just thought to myself, well, why did that have to happen? He was wearing clothes the previous scene. This is a Terminator now where you have to go through time with and come out naked on the other side, whatever.
Yeah, well, you know what? Now that you say that, maybe it's because they had to inject some of Colbert's DNA into the mycelial transporter. Oh, this is so stupid. And so the DNA wouldn't have included his clothes, I guess, because literally, I guess we're supposed to believe that he was being rebuilt through DNA. I don't know. All I know is I didn't want to see his ass. That's all I know. Live and let live. I may not agree with you, but I will defend your right to. What's that saying, Big Sexy? You're an attorney.
Defend your right to say it.
I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it. Not that I disagree with a certain lifestyle, but it's like I'm just not of that lifestyle. So, would I rather have seen Burnham's naked ass there? Sure. But if I'm going to be fair, no asses. We see no asses on the show.
Wow.
So, we all get to use the same bathrooms. We don't see anybody's ass. So, any last thoughts on this episode? What do we got coming up next week? Did they what we saw next week? Craig, you're saying that was a preview of the rest of the season, or was that the next episode?
Oh, I don't remember now. I thought it was the rest of the season. Maybe it was the next episode.
I got a sense it was the next episode because I think it's on the next Star Trek Discovery.
Okay.
I don't know, man. Craig, do you ever see yourself abandoning this show?
Maybe. I've abandoned other shows that I've started watching, I must say, and I was really into it. I'm just trying to think. There's a show called Manifest that it really had an amazing premise, and I started watching it, and then now I'm just over it already, which is a pity because it started out with such promise. So,
well, this is Star Trek, so I assume you would give that, you would kind of hang on a little bit longer. I'm surprised that you said you would give it up if it got bad.
Yeah, well, it's already been 2 seasons, so I mean, it's quite a while so far. But I don't know. That's what I said. I want to see them play these stories out, and if it's a clever way of, if it turns out to be clever and cool, maybe I'll give it another chance and watch season 3 if there's one.
Let me ask you one question before we go. Given the state of this season, Big Sexy, it sounds like you've seen all 4 because you mentioned scenes from the last episode. So it sounds like you've seen all of them except for this last one. But given what you've seen, Big Sexy, given what you've seen, Craig, how does it temper your response to the upcoming Picard series? Does it make you fearful of what they're going to do, how they're going to f*** that up?
Yes. Is it the same producers and all that? The same team?
I believe it's Kurtzman.
I would hope that, and I don't know the man, obviously, but I would hope that, I've just forgotten his name. Patrick Stewart. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I would hope Patrick Stewart knows his character well enough to know that if they feed him some bullshit, he won't do it.
Well, I don't know. I've said that too. Remember when we talked about Nemesis, Star Trek Nemesis? I made the comment, don't these actors own these characters? Why wouldn't they go to Stuart Baird and say, well, Marina Sirtis did. She called him an idiot. But I said, remember, why didn't any of the actors say, this is not in my character? Why wouldn't Patrick Stewart say, Picard doesn't give a shit about driving a space buggy?
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
If you agree to that, God, I got to tell you, just his age, the way he looks now, he looks so frail. I just,
Yeah, Mike, do you want to describe that clip that was on the show? Where he was briefly talking about how it's going to be 19 years in the future.
I don't recall. Go if you do you recall what he said?
Yeah, he said it's going to be 19 years in the future.
Right.
So that's pretty much all he said. And then they went on to the thing where he said, "Oh well, they try to make his character speak French." And
Oh
then
yeah. Yeah.
If they make it 19 years in the future, I'm sure he's retired, and that's cool, But what's he doing? Is he back on Earth in the vineyards? I hope not.
Well, wait. Now you guys know that the premise of the show is that Picard's life drastically changes based on the destruction of Romulus. Now, what do we know about that setup? That happened in the Kelvin universe.
Oh God! I was going to say, when did Romulus get destroyed?
Wasn't it destroyed in one of the movies? Yeah.
I don't watch the Kelvin universe.
It was destroyed. Craig, wasn't Romulus destroyed in the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek?
I thought Vulcan was destroyed.
Well, wait. Well, why was Nero? Wasn't that the bad guy's name? That was played by Eric Bana. Wasn't he a Romulan whose family was killed when? Yeah, that's why. That's why they destroyed Vulcan in response, I thought.
I try and block that whole thing out of my mind. So I don't remember.
If they take Picard,
Picard that we see is the one from the original universe. So it could be that they're going to write in that Romulus gets destroyed in the original universe as well in the future.
Well, we all know, based on our friends at Midnight's Edge, that there are 3 different Trek timelines. Now, there's canon, which is what we all know through Berman and Roddenberry. There's Trek Prime, which is what these guys are trying. These guys like Kurtzman, they are trying to say that J.J. Abrams' version of Trek is Prime. And then there's Discovery. So what they're trying to do is merge. They want us to forget about canon. This is what Midnight's Edge is saying, and it has the ring of truth. They're trying to merge Trek Prime, what they call Prime, which is Kelvin, with Discovery.
oh God.
So
yeah, it's just a theory though. So I mean, I'm just gonna let it play out and see.
Well,
I'll make this real simple. And I'll watch the first few episodes of the Picard show, but the minute I see they have with the timeline and try to make it Kelvin or Discovery, I'm out.
I guarantee you, I'll be willing to guarantee you that on that Picard series, somehow they're going to make it so that Ethan Peck, is that his name, who's playing Spock now, he will interact with Picard. I almost would bet anything that's what we'll do, and that will solidify what the timeline is.
And Big Sexy will have left the building.
All right, people. Usually, like I say, I usually do my own little review of each episode, but because of Craig's vociferous protestations about this episode,
Whoa.
I decided
I
that
sorts out today.
let's. Hey, I went to college. I decided to bring him on the show and bring Big Sexy. So you got to talk to Sal, Big Sexy. Get him to drop the episodes off the back of the truck more frequently, okay?
I can get them the night they come out. It's just, why put in the effort? The show stinks.
Wow. Okay. Well,
Tell me I'm wrong.
I can't argue with you necessarily anymore. Okay, I can't. I'm too tired. But anyway, you guys agree with us? Let us know if you. Well, I know there's a contingent of Discovery fans out there who nothing can go wrong on this show, and I'm not going to postulate why I think they are so devoted to this show. I would tend to think it has nothing to do with being a fan of Star Trek per se, if you know what I mean. It's more of, wrongs being righted in the 21st century, which I don't have a problem with, but You can do that and still write some good damn shows and keep canon or keeping continuity for me. But all right, there you have it. That's why I had to bring my crew together on this episode. So hey, we will be here, or at least I will be here again next week, next Thursday, a new Trek. I will be right here with you. All right, take care, guys.
Later.